Way back, well, what feels like way back, in 2018 I watched a little show called Stranger Things. At the time I thought it was alright. Not like my favorite or anything, just something that I happened to watch at that period of time that was popular a couple years previously, and as we all know is still very popular today. But little did I know what an insane, absolutely mind-boggling show it would be. This is my experience with how Stranger Things transforms. Nostalgia. That's how most people write off this show whenever I hear it mentioned by maybe more cynical reviewers or just in general online.
I really loved the show. The main thing that people are talking about with this show is the nostalgia. Every article, every review, 80s nostalgia. That's the least interesting aspect of it to me.
Nostalgia is something that has definitely been used for bad more often than good, and frankly, can't blame people for griping about it, because we did have some very bad experiences thanks to modern Star Wars films, which are pretty much just reboots based on nostalgia, Jurassic World films, the latest Ghostbusters movie, the latest Terminator films, the latest Predator movie, the latest Alien movie, the list goes on. So in a world already full of bland nostalgia bait, we are introduced to a show that is boosted by that very aspect. It's built on the aspect of being appealing to 80s kids about 80s kids, titled On July 15th, 2016, we saw 3 kids discover a girl with superpowers while in search of their lost friend that not only changed the fictional town of Hawkins, but also transformed movies and TVs around the world by taking little pieces of old and making something completely new for people of all ages to experience. Thanks to the ever-building character roster, this show has something for everyone. Though the first season felt more small-scale compared to the later sequels that became more grandiose and ambitious in their effects, including writing and arcs, splitting them into different sections similar to the Lord of the Rings films to meticulously, eventually, meet in the middle and solve the problem at hand. Each season pushes and transforms these characters into someone new, and they all learn a lesson, develop new relationships, and grow. It's clear that they made an impact on modern fashion because it's becoming more and more common to see 80s-like clothing in stores these days. Heck, I mean, look at me. Because of the real, actual 80s kids, 80s adults would be the case. And because of them, it's a reminder of their childhood. But why do modern people like me, who have never even lived back then, feel some sort of nostalgia for a time we never lived? Stranger Things has left me with a serious nostalgia boner for a time I've never been alive. I mean, I grew up around 80s movies and music and all of that, but I believe majority of its viewers that are my age probably were never experienced any of those things. But even if they did, they never lived in the culture or the time frame of the 80s. Based on what my father has told me, he's an 80s kid, he claims Stranger Things encapsulates the feeling of the 80s. And if that's the case, I think I would have loved being a kid back then, frankly. I'd argue against the criticism of nostalgia being for views or, nostalgia reasons, nostalgia bait, as most people use that term, but that it's actually a really smart creative decision to create a show heavily inspired by the culture and the feel of a very unique time frame, and it gives her a rather unique feeling and a rather bland cinematic landscape at the time. This show has made such an impact that Hollywood is already trying to strike gold like the Duffer Brothers did with the first season of this show, and Hollywood has continued to fail. Wonder Woman 84 is especially a great example. The film being sold as an 80s throwback movie does nothing for the story tone of the film, and it's kind of just a joke. Stranger Things knows exactly how to use those aspects to its advantage. I absolutely love how they mix their own made-up locations and brands like Scoops Ahoy, Hawkins High School, the arcade, the mall. It's all just, it's different, and it mixes up really well with everything else amongst real things, and it kind of just helps you to, it guides you into this world. And again, I think that the Duffer Brothers are geniuses pulling all these ideas into this. It's so smart. They are using nostalgia for the advantage of the show and transforming something old into something new and fresh. Something that is foreign to the iPhone generation, thus it feels like an experience from another world almost. Much thanks to the dark neon synthwave soaked score. For me, Stranger Things scores are just as anticipated with each season drop as the show itself. Kyle and Michael, the two guys who created the soundtracks, are absolutely geniuses, and they are masters at making this perfect soundtrack to accompany the incredibly strange show. Get used to puns. I did say strange in a Stranger Things video. I'm going to say the word things a lot. I mean, it's kind of on purpose, but it's kind of not. These dudes are god tier good at making the ultimately beautiful and also disturbing sounds that perfectly set the tone for this show. By taking musical inspiration by the greatest horror director of all time, Mr. John Carpenter, of course, amazing, and giving their own spin on his neon synth-based style. I mean, just listen to that theme. If that doesn't make you feel nostalgic, I don't know what would. The score for Stranger Things is definitely what elevates the experience for me with each and every season, with the trippy, oddly vibey synths and the simplistic atmospheric ambience that it creates is unlike any soundtrack in pretty much anything right now.
As an artist, you can try to ignore or act like you're not influenced by stuff, but all art takes things and you absorb it and adapt it, and it becomes some new thing. Everything evolves from things you've experienced. When we approach music, we obviously have all the influences and inspirations, but you get in the studio and you experiment, and that's where we come from. So it's always about finding new things, and that's what keeps me excited.
The ability this score has to immerse the viewer into this seemingly familiar but darkly strange world is insane. It elevates the Duffer Brothers' genius continually, evolving and transforming this universe they build more and more with each season. Recently, while watching the latest season of Stranger Things, I came to realize just how great the Duffer Brothers are at directing the viewer's attention and eye. Each and every season has its own setting and feel at the same time. Still, all of it is consistent with the vision for the show that they have. Each season, the Duffers masterfully set up a grand story with vibes that sometimes outshine even plot holes because it's just so vibey. If any do appear, for plot holes that is, thanks to the unique settings and landmarks that they place the characters in for us to know what's happening, where everyone is, and why. It's genius. It's world building at its finest. The made-up brands and landmarks mixed with real-life landmarks and brands catapults you into the seemingly familiar and, again, nostalgic feel of this world they continue to expand and build. The cinematography with the quick pans and zooms, strobing lights, and strikingly gross, almost too close to R-rated moments with the... some of them are a little much, to be honest. They're really gross. Anyways, when I watch a movie, right, or a show, or heck, even play a video game, if I find myself wanting to return just to that feeling, just that world, the setting, the visuals, you have successfully entertained me and hooked me. The Duffers understand that. They consistently, with each season, are practically pumping steroids into that muscle and flexing it all the way through. The darkly foggy, hellish Upside Down, the Starcourt Mall, the Hawkins High School, Hopper's Cabin, the arcade, each and every setting and landmark is alive. Not only are the visuals and the world building beautifully crafted, but the monsters that our favorite Unstable Girl 11 battles are also ever transforming and ever evolving. Starting with the Demogorgon and the smoky looking Mind Flare, the blood and guts thing, that was too much too, that was nasty. The Duffers are insanely smart. These geniuses somehow always find a way to take landmarks, visuals, and monsters and transform them into a new and fresh feeling with every single season. Every entry creating new vibes and aesthetics with each episode and season. Almost every time a new season is announced, I get more excited than usual because it's not your average piece of entertainment. When I first watched the show, it was about a year after season 2 had came out. I was like late September and August, October-ish, around there somewhere. And I began to watch the first season. I remember sitting on my couch, almost in tears, watching Hopper try to revive an unconscious Will, as he's also dealing with the mental trauma of losing his daughter and wife, flashing through his mind. This character saw saving this boy as a redemption for where he feels he failed in life. His arc, along with Jonathan and Steve, were my 3 favorites throughout the season. I think all the arcs are very well written in my opinion, and I found myself relating to them all in some way, shape, or form. I love how small scale it is and personal the story feels, as opposed to the sequels, though they're still good. And at the time, I wasn't even an adult yet, I was in the mid-teens, and I related to the story because the kids, they were kind of like me. They were kind of dumb and didn't really understand. But I knew this show was awesome, and I knew I loved it even then. And I was hooked on these characters and their lives. Now, season 2, I don't really have as many memories with. I did get this one hoodie that was really cool. I wore it for like 4 years, and then it died this year. It was faded, old, fell apart. Sad, but it's okay. Now, season 3, this is the one I got to watch the build-up. I was eagerly waiting, watching and hearing things online, and seeing stuff about this mall setting that sounded super cool to me. Then the build-up and excitement got even greater when I walked into my local Target and see a big shelf of all these summer-themed Stranger Things stuff. It just blew my mind. It was just tons of merchandise and crap, which again, argue what you want about that, but I was excited. And this hat. This hat is the reason Chips is called Chips, by the way. A close friend of mine went with me to the mall and I found this, and ever since then, I've been called Chips Ahoy by her pretty much all the time. So shout out to her. I was then Steve for Halloween. Season 3 honestly really impacted pretty much the entire year. This is probably super cringe, but honestly, every freaking time that one of the seasons ends, I cry like a big baby. I mean, it does. It impacts you. The stories and everything are just so excellently written and so impactful. Nothing gets better. As I'm sure you're aware, part 1 of season 4 of this Netflix smash hit recently hit the platform, and I'm going to be honest, my expectations were extremely low. It had felt like forever since the last season, and my mindset and everything due to COVID and riots and all this craziness over the past couple of years has completely blew my mind away from everything that I really enjoyed. But all of a sudden, just like when season 3 came out, I went to my local Target and I go in there and see tons of merchandise for characters and things I was like, what is this? What does this mean? I don't know. And all of a sudden the excitement came back. The impact that this show has made on me and my life, the fact I cry like a baby, the fact my channel name is inspired by it, the fact I always freak out with my friends every time a season drops, every time I listen to the soundtrack with a nice sunset or something like that, it's impactful. And honestly, with this season coming out, I was feeling pretty sad, I was feeling depressed, and this kind of actually gave me something to look forward to. It lifted my spirits for a little bit. And I'm glad to hear that we have one more season after this so we can see these characters grow, evolve, and transform.